Welcome to the podcast hosted by timecam.com on how to stay on top of your work.
Hi guys, this is Kate and I'm back with another episode of Stay on Top of Your Work podcast. And today my guest is Michael Kummer, Sales and Marketing Executive at Exciting, technologist and blogger. Hi Michael, how are you today?
Hi Kate, I'm very well. Thank you for asking. How about you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for joining me here today. I'm really happy to have you.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
So I'd like to begin with asking you the question, what exactly do you specialize in? And what are your professional interests?
IT in general, more specifically IT security, based on what I do on a daily basis for my primary job, that is. From a blogging perspective, it's as well technology, specifically the Apple ecosystem. And beyond that, health, parenting, just being, fit, CrossFit in particular. So those are kind of the pillars of what I deal with on a daily basis, both from a professional and from a blogging perspective.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you a question. How can we lead a company to the right direction to achieve success?
That's a very generic question, which obviously, has many answers. But based on the company I work for and the environments that I've spent the past decade in, I've seen that motivating your employees to be self-motivated is probably one of the key things to help the company, be successful, especially, nowadays with more and more employees working from home and not necessarily being in that social environment that they used to have maybe a couple of years ago. And so when you work from home, especially if you are not self-motivated, it's very easy to, start slacking and doing everything but what you're supposed to do. And so that leads obviously to could lead to a significant drop in productivity. And so we have seen the better we set employees up to be self-motivated and to be driven and to ultimately enjoy what they are doing. I think that's really one of the key issues here. If you enjoy what you're doing, you don't need anyone to tell you when and how to do it. You just do it to the best of your abilities, and that ultimately leads to productivity, and that ultimately leads to success.
Right. So you mentioned productivity, and I think this is a huge struggle for every employee, either when we work remotely or when we are in the office. How can we stay productive? How to do it? I think it's a really difficult thing. What do you think about it? Are there any methods or practices or anything else?
What helps me is, I think productivity ultimately is all about what you don't do, because there are so many tasks and so many things that you could do, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should be doing them. So by focusing what's important, what brings you and the company forward, or the project you're working on, I think is the first step to being productive. And then obviously there are a number of tools. There is a lot of technology that can help you be more productive. I use, for instance, Text Expander a lot to reduce the amount of typing I do. I don't have to type, cheers Michael or best regards Michael, 500 times a day. I just type, .br, for instance. That may only be a few seconds, but if you add that up over the course of a day, of a week, of a month, of a year, that's a significant productivity improvement, because I can spend those extra seconds on something else. But ultimately, it really boils down to knowing what you don't have to do. I have so many coworkers and colleagues that I've met over the years that are always overwhelmed and work 20 hours a day and still at the end of the day are not more productive than someone who may only be working 8 hours a day. I also strongly believe in the fact that there is only so many hours you can be productive in a day, because you need a break. Your body needs a break, your brain needs a break. So working 20 hours a day is not gonna yield more productivity in the long run. There may be stretches where you have to work more, but I think it's more about working smart. And I've actually heard another podcast a couple of weeks ago from with a blogger, and she said she with everything she does, she looks at the ROI, the return on investment. If there is no clear ROI, she doesn't do it, period. And yeah.
So you said an interesting thing, knowing what not to do. How can we actually know what not to do?
It may be a little bit of a learning process, and to a certain degree, you may have to rely on experience to see what has worked in the past. So I always try to reflect, because obviously I don't know at every single point, is this something that's going to yield results or not? Sometimes you have to find out, you have to figure it out, you have to try, and you have to fail. But then the important part is to learn from that, to look past, to reflect. And that's, I guess, generally a good thing in life, if you sometimes think about what you have been doing and decide if that's really something that you want to keep on doing or maybe make a change. So I always try to look back and see, okay, if I invested time in something, was that worth it? If it wasn't, next time I'm not going to do it, or I may do it differently. But you have to really make some hard choices. Sometimes you think it's important because it's important for someone else. Answering emails is a classic example. Getting emails is basically being on someone else's to-do list, right? Just because I get an email doesn't mean it's important for me. It's a to-do item for me that I have to take care of. It's a to-do item for someone else who wants me to, start investing time. So, just look at it and see if it helps you at that particular moment, and if it doesn't, you have to be able to say no, which is very difficult sometimes.
That's true. So let's talk about technology and about remote work, because we live in the times where the technological progress is really huge, and technology is an extremely huge part of our work.
Yes.
What do you think about technology in work? Do you use any tools, and do you think this is useful, or maybe it's not necessary?
I love technology, so I could, I'm a technologist. I love everything that's got to do with technology, but I also realize that technology is not always the answer. So you have to, again, be careful and pick your tools and the technology carefully, because otherwise you may be spending time with technology that ultimately doesn't make you more productive. But there are plenty of tools that I use on a daily basis, be it apps, be it software, be it services or devices, that significantly help me to be more productive, and to be more social. Use the Apple Watch as an example. Back in the days, every time I felt my phone buzzing or vibrating, I had to take it out of my pocket, look what's going on. If you're ever having a conversation at that particular moment, that's somewhat unpolite, if you keep looking at your phone. And so with the Apple Watch, for example, if I feel it buzz, I can just glance, take a quick look, see if that's something super important that I need to take care of, or in 99.9% of the cases it's not, and I can just ignore it and continue on. So technology can help, but choose your tools and technology wisely, and don't think that every problem has a solution, a technological solution, basically.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about remote work and also traveling, because I think I, as a remote worker, travel a lot, and I have to take my work everywhere when I go.
Yes.
So how do you think we can somehow make it productive to travel and to work and to keep a balance in life? How can we achieve it?
Well, in terms of staying productive while working, for me, it's relatively simple. I have an iMac in the office. I have a MacBook when I'm traveling, and they are pretty much set up equally. All my data is in the cloud. Some of the sensitive stuff obviously encrypted, but nevertheless, it's a duplicate of the environment that I have in the office. So I don't feel any less productive because I am on the road. In terms of work-life balance, that's obviously very important. Again, I strongly believe that you can only be productive so much, and if you're not happy with what you're doing because your work-life balance is off, then you're ultimately not going to benefit the company. right? So you have to strike that balance, and I don't necessarily think it's always up to the, or it should not always be up to the employer to tell you what the right work-life balance is. In our company in particular, we pay very much attention to performance and to the output, and don't care as much how many hours someone put in to make those results happen. If they can do it in 2 hours a day, good for them. If they need, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, so be it. If it takes longer, then something is wrong. Either, too much work for that particular person, or the particular person is not the right resource to handle the job.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to switch the topic to a healthy lifestyle and work,
Yes.
because I think this is something that people don't really pay attention to, and it's really important. What
Yes.
is your view on that? How do you maybe, stay fit and work? Because I think it's really difficult sometimes.
It is, but it is only difficult. For most of my professional life, I did not pay attention much to a healthy lifestyle. So I know the other side. I know how it is to not have time to work out and not have time to eat right, etc. But a couple of years ago, I made a change. Basically, I reprioritized, and it's all about priorities at the end of the day. And I keep it relatively simple. I think there are three main pillars that make up a healthy lifestyle, and that is, exercise, sleep, and diet. And so I'm very protective with my sleep. I always sleep 8 hours unless I wake up before and I'm ready to go. I typically don't need an alarm. So because I go to bed at the same time every day, I wake up the same time every day, and I feel refreshed. And I feel good in the morning. I've talked to a couple of my consulting colleagues a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, and I asked them, when was the last time you woke up in the morning without an alarm and you felt like, I'm ready to roll? And they're like, never. And, that's a clear indication that, you're not sleeping either right or not long enough, or your sleeping cycle is off. Beyond that, I work out 5 times a week, typically either in the morning or sometimes over lunch, or sometimes, at the end of the day. And I eat right, or at least based on the science that I've seen, I think I'm eating right. The whole family really is on a paleo diet. And so we stay away from pretty much everything processed, and we eat, fresh veggies and fruits and meat and seafood and all the good stuff. And so once you have that ingrained in your life, it's actually not difficult at all. In fact, it's very simple. Just go to bed at the same time. Get up at the same time. Eat, stay away from junk food, and exercise. And once you're in that cycle, you start feeling really good and much better than many other people that you talk to. It becomes very simple to hang on to that.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm thinking about all these things we talked about combined together. What do you think are like the main mistakes people do so that they cannot work properly, they cannot stay healthy and productive? Can you think about anything like that, or maybe it's too difficult?
It's certainly a tough question, but the people that I've seen change only changed once they have seen proof what an unhealthy lifestyle does to you, once they've realized that there will be consequences to abusing your body. And on the flip side, once you have seen clear proof of what doing it right can do to you, once you have experienced that feeling of, just feeling good, of not being tired after lunch, of not, not being, bloated all day, or whatever it may be, not feeling, out of breath when you have to walk up a couple of stairs, once you really feel the difference, I think it becomes much easier. And you have to really, I think the general issue is that people are afraid of change. I think that's just a human thing. And sometimes change can be painful and difficult. But I also believe that once you start embracing change, once you put yourself out there, once you enjoy being uncomfortable, be it, meeting new people or whatever the case may be, changing your diet, changing your sleeping patterns, once you're okay with that feeling of being out of your comfort zone. I think that then everything becomes much easier. And that's, I think, the biggest hurdle to be out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. So now I'd like to ask you, what inspires you in your work?
What inspires me? At the end of the day, it's being able to help someone else to, in my professional job, the software that we sell that makes someone else's life easier. If they come back and say, you know what, instead of now having to spend 6 months on a project, I could do it in 3 months and the outcome was so much better. Getting that positive feedback of being able to introduce change, positive change for someone, that is certainly one factor. And then in terms of the reason why I started blogging is because, people realized that I, know a little bit about technology and a little bit about that and this. And so they kept asking me questions and I just started writing it down because I figured if one person has the issue, maybe someone else has as well. And I happen to have a solution. And that really what inspires me, that, seeing then that I could help someone, I could change someone's life, at least a tiny bit, and push them maybe in a more positive direction. That's ultimately what inspires me.
That's nice. That's really nice. So I have one last question to you,
yes.
Which relates to the name of our podcast, which is Stay on Top of Your Work. How do you stay on top of your work?
Basically by going back to, the basics of productivity. Every day I look at my list and I decide what I'm not going to do and what I'm going to do. And then and I'm also okay if I can't complete something, staying on top of something doesn't necessarily always mean to finish it. I mean, I like to keep, at the end of the day, have an empty inbox, but sometimes I realize today I cannot do that. And I'm okay with it. Being okay with not completing your work every single day because, you may be waiting for someone else's feedback, etc. That's how I stay on top of my work, in combination or in addition to all the tools that I use and all the other strategies that I employ to figure out what to do and what not to do. Okay,
that's nice. Thank you very much, Michael, for the interview. It was my pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, and thank you.
And we got some really great tips from Michael today. If you're hungry for more, make sure to check out Michael's blog. And you can find more information about him and about the blog under this podcast. And stay tuned for the next episode, and I see you next time. Bye-bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Timecam. You can listen to it on iTunes and SoundCloud. Subscribe to get more content and always stay on top of your work.